You probably think you'd recognize evil if you saw it, but history proves most people don't. In fact, they usually help it, while believing they're on the right side. So the question is, what flips the switch? How do kind, caring, intelligent people become part in something destructive? So in this video you will see how good people get hijacked by evil, and why it's happening again right now. You would be totally part of the resistance, right? I mean, in case some evil dictatorship arises, you would resist, right? You'd be like Schindler, right? But what if it's not about whether you're good or bad? What if the real test is whether you're aware of what's shaping your identity in the first place? Most people believe they would never be part of some evil movement. They believe they resist. But history and science shows a different story. They show that people easily comply, don't question what's been fed, and execute because they've been told to. It's like something gets into your perception and starts filtering how you see the world. And at first you don't notice. But soon you start seeing enemies where you used to see friends and people. And that same pattern is showing up right now, right in front of our eyes. A pattern as old as humanity itself. And it has only one goal: to destroy what makes us human. And to stop that pattern, we have to understand how it works. You would think that evil starts with violence, right? But it doesn't. It always starts with separation. That's what Belgian psychologist Matthias Desmet found when he studied the psychology behind mass control. He identified 4 specific conditions that, once present in a society, make it vulnerable for something he called mass formation psychosis, a kind of a collective trance. The first is isolation. People feel cut off from each other, socially, emotionally, spiritually. Even if they're surrounded by others, they feel alone. They don't trust, they don't connect, they don't feel seen. After lockdowns, millions of people reported feeling more alone than ever, despite being constantly connected online. Zoom calls replaced real connections. Friendships faded, eye contact became awkward. I mean, have you recently tried to hold or build eye contact to someone that you pass by on the street? It's awkward. People are not used to that kind of contact anymore. They look away immediately, if they look at all. People stopped hugging their friends or parents. And men in general in the Western world are so deprived of bodily contact. Men usually only get a hug from their female friends, if at all. And if they lack female connection, they isolate more and more. Second is a lack of meaning. Life feels flat, empty. Work has no real purpose. Routines feel mechanical, and there's no deeper sense of why anymore. Many people admit they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They basically just show up to jobs they don't care about. They sit down and scroll through news they don't care about. And even success feels empty. More and more report they feel they don't have any deeper purpose. It's just everyday life and distraction. The third is free-floating anxiety. This isn't fear with a clear target, it's more like fear with no outlet. People feel tense, unsafe, unsettled, but they don't know why. There's a constant background fear now. The fear of climate collapse, the fear of financial collapse, the fear of political collapse. War, terror, inflation. People feel unsafe, but they cannot name one clear reason. It's just a sense that something is wrong all the time, or a long time already. It's like a low hum in your apartment that you cannot fully locate, but you also cannot ignore it. It's like your nervous system is waiting for something, anything, to go wrong. I mean, remember seeing someone in the store without a mask. Something in your body tensed up, before your brain could even explain why. And finally, free-floating frustration. The same built-up pressure turns into irritability, resentment, and even rage. But again, there is no clear enemy. So the moment someone offers a narrative and names a target, the entire crowd locks onto it. People snap over small things. Drivers explode in traffic, comment sections are full of hate. Someone says one wrong word and they're attacked. And as soon as that one narrative forms, you have a new group that gives you stability. And as soon as this narrative and some authority tells you who is responsible for this chaos in the world, you have an enemy, a scapegoat, and suddenly all this chaos around you gets some structure. And that gives you a sense of stability and safety. And dissent from this narrative is seen as dangerous and evil, while obedience is the new virtue. You are then the good guys. You are on the right side of history. Even if it means shutting out others, physically attacking and harming them, or even destroying their livelihoods. even if it means doing evil things for a pseudo-good cause. But not because you hate others, but because you've been told to do so. And we've seen this pattern lots of times in history before. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most disturbing experiments on humans. Participants were instructed to give electric shocks to another person in the other room when that person answered a question incorrectly. The shocks weren't real, and the other person was an actor. But the participants thought all was real. The authorities in the lab coats instructed the participants to increase the levels of shock into an area where that would have killed the other person. And most people obeyed the authority figure, even if the quote-unquote victim screamed in pain or got unconscious. And why? Just because some person in the lab coat told them to do so. The participants weren't some evil group of people. They were regular volunteers. And we like to think we're the ones who would stop. We like to think we're the ones who would speak up. We think we would be different. The thing is, these participants were not driven by hate. They just outsourced their responsibility. They outsourced care, love and compassion, the things that make us human, to some pseudo-authority. And they did what they were told. And that same psychology showed up in Nazi Germany. Neighbors turned on neighbors, not because they hated them, but because it was the right thing to do. They were told to report dissenters and Jews, to stay silent, to comply. And many believed they were protecting their country. And today we see that. And we know that was clearly wrong. But right, that's like 100 years ago. Today we are smarter. We would never do something like that. We learned from our mistakes, right? During COVID, people weren't allowed to visit their relatives. You weren't allowed to fly, get groceries or eat outside in a restaurant when you weren't jabbed. Nurses, doctors and way more other professions lost their jobs because they refused the needle. And if any one of your colleagues and friends raised questions about it, they were labeled and called names. They had to be ridiculed for being stupid, shut out of the group and society just because they didn't follow the narrative. And all in the name of safety and the greater good. And I said it as someone who got vaccinated too. And I also occasionally thought that we are still in these lockdowns because other people refused to get vaccinated. But I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. Because I also thought in school, oh, in 1933, I'd totally be in the resistance. But here's the thing, for the greater good is how it always starts. Because no one supports censorship, control, punishment, thinking they're the bad guy. They support it because it sounds noble, because it's framed as protection.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
That's how modern totalitarianism works. It doesn't use force at first. It uses language, something that's directly copied from 1984 and Orwell's doublespeak. Like, war means peace. We're told that sending more weapons creates peace, even though peace usually begins at the negotiation table and not on the battlefield. But questioning that feels now like a conspiracy and not a dialogue. While governments funnel your hard-earned tax dollars, public money, into their private pockets. And somehow being pro-war is now being framed as being on the right side of peace. It's like living in a world where the arsonists are the firemen. And if you are against it, don't worry. Germany now encourages reporting people for the wrong opinion about war and other narratives. And new laws make certain types of speech legally risky in Germany. You can go now to prison in Germany for a lie. But who decides what the lie is? And it sounds like a reasonable thing to do because no one wants to be lied to. But do you think the same institutions that, let's say, got it wrong the first time should be the same institutions that decide what's a lie and not? And some of their political opponents in Europe are being jailed. But it's framed as protecting democracy because they've been labeled as dangerous. But what if that labeling is just another tool of control? That's the issue with political correctness. Because something is either correct or not. If something is politically correct, it's already a lie. So that means shutting those dangerous groups out is a good thing, right? Because you are protecting democracy, right? Totalitarianism hides behind good intentions. Or as Kurt Tucholsky said, the opposite of good is well-intentioned. And here's the tricky thing. Once a group believes it's protecting truth and safety, it needs someone to blame, someone to punish, someone they believe is holding back their ideal future. And that group defines itself then by opposition. It only exists because it believes someone else is dangerous. But here's the twist. The group then causes harm, but accuses the other group of doing exactly that, what they've been doing. For example, they support censorship while accusing the other group of being anti-democratic. They justify violence and riots while causing the other side dangerous. They exclude, shame and attack, but see themselves as the victims. The cruelty inside the group isn't seen. Or when it's seen, it's being reframed. Because we're doing it for all the right reasons. Have you ever reposted something, like a political opinion, that you weren't even sure was true because other people were angry about it? I mean, I certainly have. But that's not you being evil. That's fear dressing up as virtue. Cancel culture thrives on this. You're ashamed for not being inclusive enough, even though you just think differently or simply asking questions. It becomes an uphill battle. One mistake, one misgendering, one outdated phrase, and the mob you were part of before turns against you. The people who demand control over what's true and right seem to forget one simple thing. The ones in history that silenced and censored others, those were never the good guys. And this is how projection works. You accuse others of lacking compassion. But instead of showing them compassion, you attack, cancel, humiliate them. Instead of listening, you punish. Instead of explaining with kindness, you demand obedience. And when people begin to push back on you, the cycle deepens. And you feel threatened. And you feel unsafe. And then you get angry. And you need to defend the truth. But truth doesn't need your defending. Because truth doesn't panic. Only fear does. What is true is true. There's no need to defend it. The truth always comes to light. And a great sign, by the way, that someone is not standing in truth is when they get triggered by a different opinion. Because now they're acting from fear. As if someone else's words could erase their reality. Again, not because they're evil. Not because you're evil. But because people outsource responsibility. They let a narrative think for them. They hand over compassion to an ideology. We think we're defending our values, but what we're actually doing is dividing the world in worthy and unworthy. And as soon as someone becomes unworthy, it feels justified to shame them, to silence them, or to erase them. Or as Hannah Arendt said, every form of totalitarianism is rooted in dehumanization. Cancel culture, censorship, projecting onto others. Participating in that, you are building a world where you too will not speak freely, where you cannot ask anything, where you cannot breathe correctly, where you cannot be human. Remember, you reap what you sow, always. And at some point you might realize this isn't about politics, culture, or opinion anymore. There has to be something deeper running the show, something that doesn't care about left or right. Because once you start seeing the same pattern across history, across different ideologies, it's not just human behavior anymore. It's like a filter that clouded people's perception. It's like a virus that spreads from mind to mind. It's like malware that infects your system, but only when people are disconnected, afraid, and looking for direction. And it doesn't care which system it infects, so it doesn't matter what ideology it is, if it's left or right, progressive or religious. It just needs people to be disconnected from each other and disconnected from their own truth and clarity. When people stop connecting to others and start living in fear from that whatever they've been told today to be afraid of. The virus makes the host act cruel against others, and that's when it spreads. When it produces more fear in the world, in others. While at the same time it rewards the cruelty, because it's been done for the right reasons, for the good cause. It rewires your perception. You start seeing everything through its lens. Love becomes weakness, for example. It makes you believe that talking about love for other people and the world is something bad. That love for another person is something you need to confess. Or obedience becomes pride, and pride always says, I'm better than you. And because you obey some pseudo-authority, some narrative, and someone else doesn't, you are better than him. But exactly that's the part no one seems to see. That virus just doesn't hack your belief system, it hacks your identity. It makes you feel the morally better for being infected. It inflates your ego, and you start to think, if you're not with me, you're against me. And that makes it so destructive for yourself and for humanity. And I'm not saying this lightly, I've seen it in myself. The moment I thought I was better than someone because of how awake I was, that's when I knew the virus had me too. It makes you feel anxious, aggressive, and prideful. And you start to act aggressive, and you think you're better than others. And with that identity, that you think you're better, and the other one is your enemy, it makes it really hard to get rid of the virus. Because who are you when you don't know who you are fighting against? That's why you see normally kind and intelligent people outrage. That's why this evil mind virus is so powerful. It makes you defend the very thing that is destroying you. You mistake the infection for your identity. So any challenge to the virus is a threat to you. You're not protecting the truth. You're protecting the thing that took your clarity away. And that's the real enemy. Not people. It's never people. You're not seeing people defending the truth. You're seeing people defending the identity the narrative gave them. And losing this identity means losing themselves. and that's like dying. And that's frightening. That's why seemingly good people start to do evil things, because they're afraid. And if fear is what makes people go against their own values, then the way out cannot be more fear. You don't break the spell by fighting people. You break it by seeing the spell itself. Evil doesn't start with hatred. It doesn't even need bad intentions. All it needs is disconnection. People who stop thinking. People who stop loving. People who stop caring about each other. That's how good people become part of something they would have sworn they're against. Because when fear takes over, love shuts down. And when love shuts down, humanity does too. Evil doesn't need evil people. It needs to convince good people to stop loving and be afraid. Because love is what makes us human. And without that, the virus wins. So why do good people do evil things? It's not because they're bad. It's because they're scared, disconnected, and certain they are good. Certain that they are on the right side. But the only thing that cures the evil mind virus of fear is love.